Welcome again to Miami Valley Veterans Museum sponsorship of Valley Veterans, a program dedicated to remembering the stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, perhaps we might say, about the wars and the military challenges, but also those who have served in various capacities. And we're resuming a second program with a brother and sister here of our interest, Mareta. I'm going to get used to that yet, Mareta. Mareta Headapohl with the Red Cross, and her brother Charles Cuppy from the Korean War. We are very, very blessed to have these couple here with being brother and sister and being able to reflect back on a similar time as they saw this from stateside duty to overseas duty as well. When we were with you last with our program, we were discussing Korea and the war in Korea, or the military crisis, action, all those different terms were used back then with Charles. And we're going to get back to Charles' story in just a minute. But Mareta, that time in which Charles has been talking about, the Korean War, 52, 53, just give us a little description. We're going to shift a little bit to you for a moment before we go back to Korea. But tell us a little bit about the duties and what you carried out and what you saw at that time in the Red Cross.
Well, I was in school, and when my father was at Dayton in the
Right field.
Right field.
Right field.
There was a parachute that had a rip in it, and so they were going to throw it out. So he sent it on home, and my mother and I took it apart, saved all the thread and the rip cord and that, and made me a dress. I was in Rainbow Girls, and we always wore a long formal dress.
Wow.
So my mother and I sewed it. It's all sewed by hand. And,
Charles, you're smiling along with me here. Do you remember this happening or seeing it? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one treasure I had. excuse me, of the war, as I had this beautiful dress, which now is in your museum.
Yes, yes.
And we, as being in training, and that was, we heard what was going on, and we worked with the areas to get the stamps and bonds, and doing things for the Red Cross, took courses and so forth. So, but we didn't have the experience that the ones in the service did. I was just 2 years too late to go through the nursing programs for the military.
So were those that were serving in a very high-level military situation, of course, serving in that direction, while you were serving with the Red Cross.
And some of my teachers in nursing school at Presbyterian Hospital in Pittsburgh had been nurses and worked overseas. So they shared just some, they didn't want to scare us.
Right, right.
But they were, they had seen a lot of trauma, and if there weren't wars, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the medical advances, because each war brings more advances because of the wounds that the military has gotten.
Right.
And so that's one little plus for a war,
Yeah.
but it's tragic.
So many of us have benefited in ways we're not realizing that we owe that
That's right.
to people who have either survived or not survived, but given us through their situation these incredible medical technology advancements all the way around.
Before we leave the dress, that's recycling, which is a big thing today.
Yes, it is. It is.
And that was one small sample of many, many, many thousands of different kinds of recycling. But we've been doing it for a long time.
I have to think about it in that term, recycling. That does make a difference all the way around.
Yeah.
So now we're going to, and be free to throw something into this if you wish to, Mareta. We're going to go back to Charles now. When on our previous program we were in the midst of different movements that you were making through your service in Korea, and I want you to be able to pick up where you were.
Well, I was talking about being on guard duty. I was a corporal, and we had the M1 carbines, and 3 rounds. It was 2 below zero. It was wintertime, and so I cleared his carbine to give the ammunition to the next guy. A lot of times he didn't catch that bullet shell before it hit the ground, so it landed in the snow. So I would pick the one out of the snow, stick it in my glove,
Oh,
take a round out of my magazine and give it to him, so he had 3 rounds, 1 in the chamber and 2 in the magazine. Too many trips, I come back a glove full of cartridges, nothing in the magazine.
oh dear.
But it was, we were down south. We really didn't have difficulties where we needed to use our weapons. But date of rank was important for promotion. Down south, it was the criteria. Up north, well, you could get promoted from many different ways. But when I showed up, I'd been a corporal for some time. I bumped up to the head of the list for corporals available for sergeant. The first soldier didn't like that, but he couldn't do a thing about it. So come January, late January, somebody left. A sergeant's position opened up. I got promoted to sergeant. And a month or so later, they started getting, the draftees were starting to be finishing their 2 years, so they were going home, finishing their active duty, and 6 years inactive or reserves. But mine was enlistment, 3 years. So when I went home, I was done. 3 years and 12 days, so no big deal. But I didn't keep that sergeant slot open very long. Into January till early March, late February, I held the slot down, and when I left, somebody else got it. But that's the way it works.
The way it worked. And I know I served in Vietnam, and things that people knew the routine that would take place. They knew the story, they knew the progression, they knew the history. And some of us were relearning it every time, every day, every day. I want to go back to a reference made in our first program about the Avenger. Okay? And that's, your husband flew an Avenger.
Yes,
And-
John. John Headapohl flew an Avenger in the Second World War. And I don't know that, he didn't talk about it, but we had pictures of him actually in the plane. And so we've had those, but he wasn't in any action other than he was still in the States. And then when his time was up, then he went back to school. And
Charles, did you, you knew him, of course, at the same time?
No.
No, you did not.
No.
Okay. So I was going to see if there was a story there relative to that. We're very grateful for the dress and then some pictures that our editor, Ted Jones, will put in of the Avenger too, just to bring people visually up to date and up to speed on what that's all about, kind of a thing. Both of you, obviously, we spoke very much about the Korean War period of time. Of that time, you became much more involved, of course, with the Red Cross. That was your big kickoff point, you might say. But it also was a time of great controversy, the Korean War was, as was Vietnam. And I know you each have a thing. I'm going to come to you, Charles, secondly, but Mareta, do you remember thoughts since then, or some of the comments, or some of the ideas about Korea?
No, after I finished my nurse's training, then I got married. So I just more or less taught classes for Red Cross, and worked in my own home in Troy to do what needed to be done. Mostly it was just teaching classes and getting the blood mobile going and that, and then as the children, I had 3 boys, so they all went through the scouting.
Okay, sure.
So
Now I'm trying to recall if any of those served in the military.
no, my eldest son went over to Germany during the Afghanistan.
Okay.
He was a vascular surgeon.
Oh, okay. Certainly.
And so he went over to relieve the surgeons so they could have a breather. And he said, the people came back in bits and pieces, and how they had to put them together. And it was an experience for him, but he was not. None of the boys were in the service.
But they
He just
served-
did this as a volunteer
Volunteer.
before he retired. So
And the other 2 served in medical areas too?
no, his eldest son is an advanced cardiologist,
Okay,
and his
medical,
middle
sure.
son is a dentist,
That's right, medical.
and
Yep.
his younger son is head of Hartzell Propeller in Piqua.
Ah, okay, very good.
So but he married a nurse practitioner, so
Oh, really?
that was
Okay.
allowed.
Wonderful. There we kept the medical thing going.
Yeah,
And
we
maybe
do.
there'll be
We do.
grandchildren, great-grandchildren medical too.
Yeah.
That'll be wonderful. Well, let me go back then to Charles, because I know that you have some perspectives on the war in Korea, and maybe even some perspectives today.
It's the forgotten war, among other names. People don't want to talk about it because it's far away. We're not there. Unfortunately, we still have troops there, and they're going to be there for a while because that guy up north is not exactly our friends.
True.
And there's one air base, I think it's Kimpo, 8 minutes by air from the DMC. you get 8 minutes warning. There's not a lot you can do.
No, not much.
And it's far away, but the troops that are there, they're there. And they're serving I think, a vital purpose that gives notice to the guys up north. You may try something, but you're going to have problems. It's been a while, but they had I think it was from the space station, an aerial view of Korea at night. You could see where the demarcation, the DMZ line is.
Yeah.
North of that line, you'd see occasionally small spots of light. But south of the DMZ, lights all over the place. The South Korean economy is up and growing. We're importing cars from them, among other things.
Yes.
Up north, they're having problems, real problems. Starvation. The army is fed because they're what's keeping things going. But
I think I've seen that picture you're talking about.
it's
Quite a contrast.
night and day.
Right. That war, if I recall a little bit of my history, was one of advancement and then back, advancement and then back.
Yeah.
And just such a futile situation, seemingly back and forth. And as you said, and I've known Korean War veterans as yourself, others too who have commented on the precarious situation of fighting in that land and that environment, and also the temperatures, the cold, the snow. You mentioned the snow and the shells. It was, I think many times maybe it was forgotten because it doesn't have the romance, if I use that term, of World War II.
Yeah.
Or nor does it have the intrigue of Vietnam. But I know the museum has sought to give credit where credit is due to the Korean War veterans. And those of you that are watching out there, we certainly thank you if you have served in Korea and want to see you at the museum there too and shake your hand and thank you for that service, particular service. As we look back at these times, and then we've moved up a lot of years to where we are today. A lot of years we are today. And we have challenges, as we did, as you mentioned, Afghanistan, and your interest there personally, so forth. If you were to given the opportunity to advise our commander-in-chief, if you were given the opportunity to be, all of us would like to be much younger, and serve again with hindsight. Is there anything that you would love to have seen happen in these years gone by that would have made a difference? That's a hard question. I led you right into that, didn't I?
It's been a few years. MacArthur was Supreme Commander. He asked permission, which he should have. Can I cross the Yalu River, which is the northern boundary of North Korea? Harry said no.
Right.
What would it be like today if he had done so? To do it, it would have been very, very, very expensive. The Yalu River would have been dammed up with the bodies of Chinese, Koreans, United Nations troops.
Wow.
Taking the UN flag across all those bodies, planted China, mainland China.
Mm-hmm.
Chairman Mao, we are here.
Mm.
Pick the flag up, walk back south.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
I don't know.
Yes. And then it's interesting, from the Red Cross experience, there were those that were in the midst of things.
Well, they do what they can,
Mm-hmm.
and it's we can't repeat history.
We can
because
learn from it, can't we?
Yeah,
We should
we
learn.
should learn,
Should learn from it. Yeah,
but
kind of a thing
you
there.
know, we just
Yes.
it's overwhelming.
It's
Yes.
good, like the museum there, "Thou shall not be forgotten." And we uphold that slogan, not just as a slogan, but as a meaningful, heartfelt point. In our remaining 6 minutes or so, describe what you're doing today, Mareta. What kind of activities do you still enjoy relative to your service?
Well, they've been having it is Pedro the Penguin class for children 3 years to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
That we teach them about tornadoes, fires, and that kind of thing. And I always enjoyed teaching the little children.
Because unlike war, Red Cross is known now for serving in areas of disaster,
Right.
that we've had so many.
Right, and we've had so many disasters. A lot of people don't realize that Red Cross isn't on anybody's budget. It's the American people
Mm-hmm.
are what support it.
Mm-hmm. Donations.
And being helpful, and they're starting a lot of more blood donating also. So
I remember when 9/11 and the tremendous outpouring. I was teaching in a high school at the time and passing firemen's boots to fill them up at football games.
Right.
And the money would go to the Red Cross. And I think there was some misunderstanding at the time, because money collected today is to fortify the strength of the organization tomorrow. It's not exactly going to be the nickel you put in today put into the service today. It's building up toward the next catastrophe and so forth, and understanding that. Yeah, those were times. The so Charles, what I know we've talked before about your hobbies and so forth as a woodworker. What else do you like to do in this golden area, as we call it, of our retirement?
I use crossword puzzles, I use jigsaw puzzles, and I use Sudoku.
Those puzzles, games?
It's not exactly a game. You have to think about it, fill in the numbers in the squares so that you have the right combination in each square, each line, each row.
Mm-hmm. So it keeps your mind sharp.
Oh, there's easy, medium, hard, impossible. I usually start with the mediums or sometimes with the hard ones. And some of those hard ones, they're hard.
Very hard.
But some of them, I'm able to complete them, all 9 squares in a reasonable time. Fill in all the blanks, what could be, figuring out how, which ones I can erase. It is challenging. But the puzzles, they're getting now, instead of being a rectangular fixed shape, one I completed not too long ago is a cardinal resting on a fence post. the juncture between that fence post and the bird itself is the legs, and it's only 4 or 5 pieces of the puzzle. It's anything but square.
Well, I think we could all follow your pattern of mind games, keeping active and so forth. And our senior years have been very, very important. Those kind of things that go together. As we conclude in our last couple of minutes, and the time has flown by here in our second edition of meeting with the both of you here. It's wonderful to see brother and sister still together, enjoying each other's company and together on this program. I know when our executive director, Karen Perk, mentioned the possibility of Charles joining you there, I thought, wow, this would be really something, because we've never had a sister and brother before do that. So I thank you very much for coming together and accompanying and so forth, reflecting on these times that you've had. And we certainly invite you to continually come out and visit those things that you've donated to the museum, as we appreciate that very much. And Charles, you and I have talked. I have family members out there at Dorothy Love, and it's a great organization and brings people together of certain generations, and I applaud you for being a good friend to my in-laws out there. Thank you very much. As we conclude our episode here of the Miami Valley Veterans Museum sponsorship of Valley Veterans. Again, we've been here today with Mareta Headapohl and Charles Cuppy, both treasured people who have served their country well. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again. Again, remember the museum on South County Road 25A in Troy. Thank you for joining us.